What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 49 of the Block Exploring podcast. With me is Tommy, as always, and we are back. It's been a week, sorry about that, but we're back in action and ready to give you the news. Now, as always, this podcast is not financial advice, but this week we're going to talk to you about the PoolTogether Lawsuit. So, before we do that, we're going to hop into the state of the market, give you a quick overview, give you a feeling about how the market's thinking, how people are feeling, and then we're going to give you our perspective on this lawsuit. And that's it for this episode, a short first one. Now, let's get into it. The state of the market right now, I'd say a lot of red in the market, a bearish market on the past 20-day charts. Major projects are all in the red. The only project that I've seen that's slightly in the green on a 7-day basis is Luna, and that project is only 1% in the green. So yeah, a bit of a bearish sentiment going on, not a lot of faith. But that's okay. That happens sometimes, right, Tommy?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've had like three moments at least last year that are very emblematic, like very much in the same feel as what we have now. And think we'll get past it just fine. As long as we keep building,
Yeah.
the vibes continue.
No, exactly. And I think, yeah, well, with this ongoing lawsuit, it's another little FUD message that a lot of people will be reading. So it's good to give them some insight as to what this actually means,
Mhm.
where the plaintiff, Mr. Kent, is coming from, and how they should kind of think about this. Maybe also what to look for in certain projects as a risk factor, right? Because
Mhm.
we see this lawsuit go about the word lottery. That's kind of the key word for this lawsuit.
Yep.
So Tommy, can you quickly give us a rundown of who's being sued and why it's important?
Yep. So the defendants in this court case are pooled together. That's a DeFi protocol that is described as a no loss prize game. In Pooled Together, you're able to stake different tokens and you know get the chance to earn potential prizes. And the idea is that you don't actually lose money as you're staking it. But right now, Mr. Kent is suing Pooled Together as the lawsuit describes that suggests that Pooled Together is not one of the institutions listed by the U.S. By U.S. law as institutions that are able to issue prize linked assets and such, and hence why um, Mr. Kent is taking Pooled Together to court, framing the protocol as gamifying finances and could be potentially risky to everyday consumers. Is the idea, and it brings up questions of who is actually accountable for when something quote unquote goes wrong with a protocol, because ultimately the protocol is immutable and on the blockchain, and once developers deploy it, it's there to stay
Yeah.
as it is. But yeah, it has interesting questions, and it calls into questions. It's some people are framing this court case as quite pivotal, or will have huge ramifications for how other DeFi projects will be treated. And there's like an interesting side story to this as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting because when I hopped onto the website of Pool Together, I basically saw all the words that kind of spook me whenever I look at a crypto protocol. I saw the word prizes. I saw the word, what was it? I saw the word account, which also kind of spooked me. But draws. I saw a big, winning earnings cup. I saw a little chest with like a lock and some jewels on it. Prize tiers, these kinds of things. And in America, there's a bunch of gambling regulation, and a lot of online gambling isn't allowed. And crypto tends to fall under that number quite fast because rewards in crypto quite often fall under a very broad interpretation of a lot of prize winning uh, tax acts and also a lot of these consumer protective acts for lotteries. So, what to me is interesting about this lawsuit, and I don't know if the guy has a really good point or not. Of course, we are not legal advisors either to you guys. Um, but what I see from the way that this thing happens, right? The Mr. Kent deposited $10 into this thing, which is quite low, I would say, for DeFi, especially if you have to move into Polygon and then like you pay a lot of gas just for $10. Kind of wild. And then he said, "Pulled together isn't a lottery, and and the deposits made by savers don't qualify as purchase of the lottery tickets," is what the defendant argued because, yeah, well, the deposits aren't direct purchases, they're deposits. So it's kind of interesting.
It's
I think,
I think it's interesting that he actually didn't make a loss because the protocol does, by inherently is programmed in a way where you're not supposed to make a loss. Yet, so he's actually, so the protocol, nothing that anybody who's getting into this protocol would know. Nothing went wrong in terms of the protocol. Like the protocol was doing the thing it was programmed to do, but he's managed to he's taken the protocol to court, um, under the pretense, well, under the this provision in New York state law that allows people to buy a lottery ticket from a illegal lottery ticket issuer in order to take them to court because they're an illegal lottery issuer. So this is where the $10 comes in, and he tangibly didn't make a loss from the protocol, anything going wrong with the protocol. But now it's bringing into question who's actually going to be held accountable if in the instance that this protocol is determined as not a not an institution that's able to give out a lottery style prize linked thing,
yeah.
which is which is interesting for a few reasons, because the protocol itself, the way it's programmed, is quite obviously not a lottery, considering
Hmm.
you can't make a loss, and
Yeah.
it acts very much in the same way as other staking protocols. So I think um, Mr. Kent, or whoever other people are behind this lawsuit, are very much exploiting the way Pool Together frames the protocol, um, in a gamified way, in a way that can be associated with lottery risk and gambling. These scary terms that regulators are very happy to want to regulate, and it's an easy way to shoehorn um, this protocol that's framing itself in a way that's quite blurry, and try to regulate in this industry through those means by framing, because crypto has had its fair share of this before, where it's been associated with drug money laundering, where
Yeah.
actually a small percentage of crypto transactions actually are that you
Hmm.
know
I think it's interesting that the protocol itself doesn't have an own a token of their own.
that's also
And
interesting.
I think that's actually good for their side of the argument
Yeah.
because if they had a token of their own, you could see that. I think you could argue that as a buy-in of a sort of entry or of a
Hmm.
ticket. But
Yeah.
in this case, they're just using a stable coin as a deposit
Yeah.
mechanism. And I think important here is the definition of, well, the ticket, right? The entry to the lottery and the buy-in.
Hmm.
So in this case, I think the importance and the interesting part of this case lays in, will the jury, will the judge find this to be a purchase of a
Mhm.
lottery ticket? Will they find one somewhere, and will it be considered valid?
Yeah, and that's going to be definitely interesting to see, because if we're gonna, how crypto savvy, how crypto native is this judge to understand the broad and blurry lines that most of these protocols, tokens, and etc. walk. Understanding the deep nuance and not getting caught up in the framings of things, or how people might try to frame things for their own agenda, is going to be, yeah, very difficult. But the other side of this case is how who's going to be held accountable, where people would suggest the company of Pool Together would be, or the people behind Pool Together would be held accountable, but they've framed themselves as just um, basically people who point and explain to people how to use the protocol, and not necessarily um, active moderators of the protocol anymore. I mean, because how they view it is that they've created the a protocol was created, it's been deployed, their hands are people are able to participate in the protocol at their own free will. We just explain to people, like basically run a website to show people how to access this protocol, which is interesting because then are they really anything to be held accountable? Are there anything to be held accountable? I don't. That's not the right phrasing, but you know what I mean. Like an illegal lottery issuer, right? There's an issuer of that illegal lottery ticket that should be held accountable, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, there's no active participant or person who's actually issuing anything. It's
No.
yeah,
There's a protocol that it's almost as if someone you're the conceptualizer is the only one there, but the actual issuance is happening from a
yeah.
decentralized
And
way,
but
and it's fully
what's even being issued?
automated.
It's like you're how this protocol works is you go stake your tokens. Depending on how many tokens you've put into the pool, you're entitled to that many potential possibilities of getting the cash prize.
Hmm.
And the these tokens that are then staked are lent out, there's rewards generated in the background through a
Yeah,
lending process, but that's all managed by the protocol. So
true.
it's I'm very ready. I just can't wait to see what actually comes out of this, because I think most DeFi projects, or people behind DeFi projects, are trying to create DeFi projects, are probably
Hmm.
watching this very closely, just
Yeah,
because allegedly this Mr. Kent is also Elizabeth Warren campaign staffer. Elizabeth
yeah,
Warren's notoriously um, against cryptos and heavily for regulating cryptos in a very restrictive way.
yeah.
And oftentimes, I found her takes on crypto, or her understanding of crypto, to be lacking, for one. And
Mhm.
it's very obvious in her rhetoric that she's attempting to frame crypto in a certain way, and heavily focuses on, um, in this instance, I would argue, they might be using this court case to frame crypto in a light where DeFi protocols can be considered dangerous. They can be considered as lotteries, as gambling, instruments, where which need to be regulated, right? If
Facts.
I think right now regulators are looking for their in
Hmm.
to regulate crypto more, and if framing it as gambling, and dangerous is the way to go, I think this is one way of going about it. And it's just interesting that this guy happens to be Elizabeth Warren's campaign staffer. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think with that being said, that was episode 49 of the Block Exploring podcast. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys learned some keywords also to look out for whenever you're looking for these projects to see, hey, will or will not they get sued? Is this a lottery? Does it look like a lottery? Our considerations on a lottery, I think we've explained them pretty clearly for you guys. And if you have any questions, please, drop a comment, connect with us on Twitter, do whatever. And we'll see you in the next episode 50. That's a big one
Yeah.
of the Block Exploring
Right.
podcast. I'm happy to be back,
Yeah.
and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Take it easy.